Hey folks, I just wanted to say a few words about the current project now that it's posted and the repo is available. So the idea for this one is that you're going to be implementing a slightly larger chunk of code, and the actual design and the implementation is largely left up to you, right? In the labs, we usually have a pretty directed focus on what we're trying to create and how we're trying to create it. Here we'll give it a little more room. You've got a little more chance to exercise some creativity if you like. So I want to run through some of the mechanics, give you a bit of an idea of the intention of the program and what I'm hoping to see in your designs as we're going through. So as usual, we're going to use the same kind of Git process to obtain the project and submit the project. I'll talk about that in a little bit. You've still got to follow all of our usual code standards for the project. And in fact, that's actually a little bit more important with the project since you've got kind of a more open design and implementation, and it's slightly larger. The following the code standards does become even more important than with the labs. So those are the kind of general ideas. It's due the Thursday before, or the Thursday of the last week of class, so 5 p.m. April 7th. Same process as before for late penalty, same process as the labs. And again, it's supposed to be a strictly individual effort, right? No team efforts, no collaborative efforts. It's your own design, your own implementation all the way. So as far as what you're trying to do, you're going to be creating a program that maintains information about some hypothetical company's employees. So you've got a company full of developers, and they're keeping track of the seniority level of each developer, and they're keeping track of mentoring information for each developer. So the company has 4 different layers that they hire people at. Project leads are the most senior, then team leads, then developers, and then candidates down at the bottom layer. And they're essentially people that have been hired as developers but haven't finished their probationary period yet. So you've got these 4 different layers of developers, and essentially you're just going to be keeping information on who is in each level, and kind of as a byproduct, you're going to be keeping track of the seniority levels of each each developer within their group. So you'll have an idea of who's the most senior project lead, who's next, who's the least senior project lead. But we'll get there as we talk about the implementation. So the idea is your software is going to maintain lists for each of the different levels of employee. So a list of candidates, a list of developers, a list of team leads, a list of project leads. And as the program runs, it should be prompting the user as to what they want to do next. Do you want to hire somebody? Do you want to fire somebody? Do you want to promote somebody? Do you want to demote somebody? So you're going to have this whole collection of different options for the user, and you're just going to cycle through this over and over and over again until they eventually choose to quit. So the operations are to be able to hire a new employee, and you can hire them at any level. So you can hire somebody as a project lead, you can hire somebody as a team lead, you can hire somebody as a developer, but they start kind of at the back of the list. So if you hire somebody as a developer, they will be your least senior developer. So essentially what you're going to be looking at are keeping linked lists of each of these different groups. So a linked list of project leads, a linked list of team leads, a linked list of developers. And when you hire somebody new, you put them at the end of that list. So that way you can go from the front of the list to the back and see everybody in kind of order of seniority. Existing employees can quit or be fired, in which case they need to be removed from the list. So, your program, is somebody getting fired? And it's got to find them and remove them from the appropriate list. You can promote or demote people, so you can move somebody from one list to another. When they move from wherever they are in the current list to the end of the list that they're going into. So if you promote somebody from developer to team lead, they become the least senior team lead. And similarly, if you're demoting somebody from team lead to developer, they go to the least senior developer. So promotions and demotions always move somebody to the end of their new list. The other thing is we're going to keep track of mentoring information. Each employee can act as mentor for one other employee of a lower level and can have a mentor of their own from some higher level. So you'll need to keep information on who's mentoring who within this group of employees as well. So you've got to be able to provide a user with menu or a sequence of menus that allows them to repeatedly go through this choice, right? Do you want to hire somebody or promote somebody or demote somebody? Do you want to terminate somebody? Do you want to look up the level of employee? So you give the name and it specifies, oh, well, that employee is a developer. You want to be able to go through and display everybody in a particular list. So please show me all the developers. Please show me all the project leads, whatever it might be. You need to be able to assign a new mentor to somebody. So in that case, you're going to have to deal with the case of, well, a mentoring pair, if you're only allowed to have one mentor and you're only allowed to be mentoring one other person. So in that case, you do need to go through, and if the user says, oh, assign this person as a mentor for somebody else, you have to be able to say things like, oh, well, wait a minute, that person's already got a mentor, or that person is already mentoring somebody else. So you do need to be able to go through and do some error checking here. Now, pretty much the only information that we're keeping about the employees, other than kind of which list they're in, is their name. So we're not keeping track of much else in the way of information here. So you need to be able to assign new mentors. You need to be able to break up a mentor-mentee pair. You need to be able to look up the mentoring information for any given employee. You know, for this person, are they mentoring anybody? Is somebody their mentor? Who? You need to be able to display all of the current mentor-mentee pairs, and you need to give them an option to terminate the program. So you're giving them either a kind of a hierarchy of menus or this this menu with a giant collection of options, and just keep going through this again and again and again and again and again until eventually they decide they're done and they want to terminate the program. So the only catch is that you need to come up with your own linked list style of list implementation. So I'll give you a lot of freedom in terms of how you develop classes to represent this, but it does have to be your own design and your own implementation to make sure that you get some practice designing data structures, designing a custom data structure on your own, implementing it, dealing with the debugging issues. You've got a lot of freedom in what it actually winds up looking like, but again, it's got to be your own design and implementation. You can't use kind of the existing built-in list types from the standard template library or the Boost libraries or other third-party libraries. It's got to be your own design and your own implementation. Again, the usual cycle for obtaining it and submitting it. So the SSH fork and clone, and again, the name this time is project. And the same cycle as usual to do your submission. So the git adds for any files that you need to submit, the git commit with some message, and the git push. The way the repository is organized in the beginning is when you first grab it, you'll see that there's a make file, a readme, 2.h files, lists.h and project.h, and 2 CPP files, lists.cpp and project.cpp. So the hash includes and the pragmas are there, and the make file is set to compile it. The project.cpp has an empty main routine in it, so it will compile in its current state, but other than that, these files are completely empty, so it's up to you how you design and implement. But I do expect you to follow the same sort of structure as we have in the lab with respect to organization. So for instance, your main routine and the supporting functionality for that would be in your project.cpp and .h, whereas the classes for your lists would be in your lists.h and lists.cpp, along with the methods for that. So I do expect you to follow that kind of an organizational structure. You can add more .h and .cpp files if you want to, but you will need to modify your make file so that it does actually compile them correctly. I do want to be able to just type make and have it compile the program when I'm testing your code. So I think that's pretty much the rundown. Feel free to holler if you have questions or if you want to kick around ideas for your design, but I think that should get us in a pretty good place to get going.